So Chris and everyone, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to end the day listening to a talk. Let's talk a little bit about the college. Like Chris said, a collaboration between Berkeley College of Environmental Design and the University of Hong Kong Faculty of Architecture. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CED, we're that concrete building that you can always remember on campus. We were the first college to combine the disciplines of architecture, landscape architecture, and city planning together. We proudly, humbly share that we continue to be the top public school of architecture in the built environment in the United States. A little bit about me. I'm a professor of architecture and urban design, currently serving as dean. I am stepping down in June. I've enjoyed the job tremendously. Urban challenges of the 21st century, flooding and drought, resource depletion, and housing scarcity, all require solutions that are locally rooted. My research has been to develop analytic and generative design tools for mapping and transforming locales by integrating landscape, urban, and architectural systems across sites and across individual buildings. While adapting our communities for climate resilience, we can also build the unique legibility of every neighborhood. The two major contexts for my work, on the left, the American suburbs, and now the dense urban cities of China. CED first began collaborating with HKU in 2005 when Wei-Jin Wang and I both ran studios to design an interpretation of the Lilongs in Shanghai. In 2019, as Chris referred to, the two colleges established a formal design research collaboration through the funding of Berkeley alums that include Chris, so thank you, Chris, to work on designs that addressed urban resilience in the two Greater Bays. We did 1 year of work around the Pearl River Delta, but the following year when CED was working on stormwater systems in Kennedy Town in Hong Kong, COVID hit in March and the studio was supposed to travel to Hong Kong the week later. The year after that, we were remote, so the studio then worked in San Francisco. The Hong Kong studio did not work in parallel because they couldn't make it to San Francisco. But nonetheless, we transferred those lessons back and forth. And in 2023, the work of all three studios and the parallel work done at HKU was presented in Central Market in Hong Kong. And we had a great discussion there with academics and Hong Kong government officials. So the title of my talk is Urban Waters, and this was the topic of the last two HKU CED studios. In this map that shows areas of high risk for flooding, heat stress, water stress, wildfires, and hurricanes, all of these items revolve around the challenges of having either too much or too little water. And we wanted to explore what architecture could contribute to helping to mitigate this challenge. To do this, we'll need to do the speed talk on the history of urban water systems to understand what can be proposed. And hang on a second, I can see a chat coming to me. Chris, the chat's only coming to me, so. Okay, so there are three major urban water systems. There's potable or drinking water that's treated to be safe for consumption. There is wastewater, it's water that's been used and is contaminated and requires treatment before being released. And then there's stormwater. Stormwater is rainwater that runs off of surfaces like streets and roofs and often carries pollutants. Oh, it's not advancing, hang on, there we go.
It's working.
Okay, thank you. All three are interrelated when we talk about cities. And my thesis for you today is that stormwater has the potential to reshape the form of our cities. Or perhaps I should talk about it in the inverse. My thesis is that we need to reshape the form of our cities and their buildings if we are to better manage stormwater against both drought and flood. So here's a pictorial history of cities in relationship to water, energy, and transportation systems. In the late 19th century, cities were continuous, low-rise urban fabrics, maybe 1 to 6 stories, as illustrated by Beijing on the top and Rome on the second row. Stormwater ran freely through the streets and paths of each city, following the overall contours of the local watershed. In the early 20th century, there are 3 major shifts in urban systems. One is the introduction of storm and sewer water systems, which I'll talk about more in a moment. The second is the introduction of mass-produced motor cars and all of the street network that's required to support those cars. And then the third is the recognition that some medieval urban fabrics, they lacked light and air, and so the proposed solution was sunlight setbacks, coupled with high rises that were spaced far apart from each other. All of this contributes to the breakage of the continuity of urban fabrics. And so as we look at our current century, we can now see how this history of development has exacerbated our climate challenges. Today, cities are roughly 60 to 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions, primarily through energy consumption in buildings and transportation. So, what can we learn from the past to inform all these question marks for the future of cities? So while multiple urban systems are by necessity are all interrelated, it helps to take a look through one lens to better understand how the other systems relate to each other. So today we'll look at urban stormwater. Again, another rapid history. History of cities and living in close proximity, what we call urban living, is tied to the managing and organizing of multiple environmental systems that include water, energy, and transport. In developed nations, our water systems are hidden, and when they are working, we take water supply and disposal for granted. But if we go back to London with this abridged history, in the 19th century, the global health crisis was cholera, carried by contaminated water. In London, the River Thames supplied the city's potable water, but it was also an open sewer in which both wastewater and stormwater were discharged. So you can understand that there were disastrous consequences for public health in London. But it wasn't until what was called the Great Stink of 1858 that the British government addressed the urgency of the problem and built a new underground sewage system throughout the city. They built what we now call a single or combined sewer system that carried both black wastewater and stormwater from the rains. The solution, at least at that time, was to avoid contaminating the potable water for the city. The new sewer system discharged water downstream of the City of London. So potable water was taken upstream and contaminated water was discharged downstream. So while this system worked great for the residents of London, it was really not so good for the cities and the residents downstream of London. And this is the system that was implemented in cities throughout the world. So let's move back to our 2 case studies, Pearl River Delta and the San Francisco Bay. So my first question, where does Hong Kong get its potable water? 80% of Hong Kong's drinking water is imported from China. The remainder comes from reservoirs and water desalination. What about Hong Kong's sewer and stormwater systems? In 1841, China ceded the island of Hong Kong to Britain. Thus, in the 1850s, Hong Kong adopted, or had thrust upon them, the British combined sewer and stormwater system that discharged to the surrounding bay. Thus, like London, Hong Kong has an extensive tunnel system throughout the island. At the time, the population on Hong Kong was less than 100,000, so the domestic sewage that went into the bay did not cause substantial damage to the ecology of rivers and the coast. But as the urban population grew in the early 20th century, the hygienic issues of the combined system emerged, just like in London, and the Hong Kong government built a separate drainage and sewer system, splitting the original combined system into two independent ones. So now the black water and the storm water are separated throughout the island. And as a result, the black water and storm water can be treated differently before being released into the bay. One of the things really interesting about Hong Kong, potable water has always been in short supply. So it is the only city that I know of that has two supply water systems. It has the potable water system and it has a seawater flushing system. 80% of the toilets in Hong Kong use seawater. Chris is nodding. It's like the Hong Kong folks say, like, of course that is, but it's really exceptional. There really isn't another city that's doing that. So Hong Kong is unique in having two sewer systems and two supply water systems. Nonetheless, with climate change is an increased amount of rainfall in very short periods of time. And so Hong Kong continues to flood. And in 2012, they built the West Drainage Tunnel Project, which is really an enormous project that runs the entire length of the island. And the upper portion of the mountains are really caught in these reservoir systems and discharge systems that go into the tunnel. And then the lower part below the storm water tunnel line flows in traditional culverts to treatment centers along the bay edge. So here's a map of where all those stormwater treatment centers are along Hong Kong Island on the North Shore. Despite this effort, we've all seen this in the news, only a decade old, and the new system doesn't seem able to handle the kind of climate deluge that we're getting from rainwater. So this was a decade later, and even this summer, even last week, we read about the terrible flooding that happened in Hong Kong. Were you okay, Chris?
Yes. I was fine. Yeah. And thank you.
So now let's go to San Francisco. I have a quiz for all of you Bay Area residents. You didn't think I was going to talk the entire 30 minutes. So you're going to use the Q&A that I have over here. Where does the city of San Francisco get its potable water? And I'm pulling my Q&A over so I can see.
Okay.
Anybody? Any guesses? I'm
Let's
not
see.
seeing anything.
Someone just type an answer, I think.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah. Annette just type an answer, and James Lee also
Ah.
type an answer.
All right, excellent.
Great job.
is correct. Now let me see if I can get my slide to move. There we go. Our drinking water indeed comes from a variety of protected sources, 15% from surface water, smaller amounts from ground and recycling, and 85% comes from the Hetch Hetchy. Okay, where is the Hetch Hetchy? Everybody's on Google Maps. Here we go. Hetch Hetchy, all the way in this, we're getting our water from the snowpack in the Sierras. Excellent, Annette, thank you. The upcountry portion of the system begins near Yosemite Park, and it comes all the way across to hit the Bay Area. Okay, those of you from the East Bay, where does your water come from?
I think, and that just type in Sierra foothills.
I think that was from before. In fact, mm, we're actually closer to Yosemite. There we are. Similar, the watershed north of Yosemite, and the water travels over 100 miles to reach the East Bay. No idea on the East Bay. Okay, here's another question. What kind of sewer system does the city of San Francisco have? Is it single or dual? In other words, combined black and storm or separated black and storm? A bad one, I see. Separate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. San Francisco is the separated. This is what we would hope. San Francisco is the only coastal city in California with a single combined sewer system that collects and treats both wastewater and stormwater in the same network of pipes. Kind of scary, huh? So how is this affected by climate change? Stronger high-intensity rains means that when the sewers reach capacity, black and storm water drain out into the bay and the ocean, bypassing the treatment plants as shown in the upper right image of wet weather and combined systems. So yes, yuck, just like London in the 19th century. To try to compensate for this, San Francisco has built these large overflow reserves that are built as tunnels in under our streets. The black lines that you see are where we have reserved to hold water during the rainy season. We have 2 treatment plants on the west and east side. 80% of the water is treated on the east side and discharged into the bay. The northern facility only operates in the wet season. So unlike Hong Kong, we have less rainfall during our wet season, but we do have much longer periods without rain. So with climate change, atmospheric rivers increase our chance for flooding, and then prolonged drought increase our chance for fire. So far, we seem to be having a nice year. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Okay, so Hong Kong and San Francisco are typical case studies on the ways that we deal with urban water. We have technologically improved a centralized 19th century approach, increasing the capacity of our system to provide, remove, and treat water. Yet these centralized infrastructures are no longer sufficient to address our contemporary climate challenges. We are learning that this is not enough. So let me highlight 3 water characteristics of the 20th and early 21st century. They have extensive centralized water infrastructures. Hong Kong is a great example. They have extensive built coverage. Our cities are increasingly impervious to water infiltration into the ground. We've built more roads, channelized more watersheds, built more buildings, and as a result, we've made our ground impervious, loading more and more water more quickly into our centralized infrastructures. More quickly, our cities all have buildings that are designed to shed water fast. Yes, water is damaging to buildings, there's no doubt about that. But the assumption is right now that we shed all of our water into the ground, into the street, that then sheds into the centralized system. This is not working for us. So as both Hong Kong and San Francisco reveal, our approach to urban water cannot address the climate challenges we're facing. We need new paradigms for urban water today. For the collaboration between Hong Kong and Berkeley, we proposed 4 alternatives for our design studios. 1, act local. 2, decentralized. 3, value the ground. And 4, slow the water. Acting local is always important. The cultures are different, the economies are different, the communities are different. But if you look at the third row in the bar graph of rain, look at how different our rain patterns are. And while we struggle in the Bay Area with both drought and fire, Hong Kong is really impacted by the flooding. So our first case study was located in the northwest end of Hong Kong Island, called Kennedy Town. The site was selected because it typifies the section of Hong Kong Island, but in a compressed way, so that you're going from mountain to waterfront in a very short distance. There is a question that I'm going to let Chris answer about Hong Kong, about typhoons and massive rain events. I'm going to say no, but I'm going to let Chris figure that one out. I'll go back to Kennedy Town. So here's K-Town again in plan. It's in the upper left corner, up over in this corner here. The studio explored the potential for decentralizing, rethinking the ground, and slowing water at multiple urban scales. In this example, the student explored the building level, where the water is slowed down inside the building rather than shedding it on the skin and putting it immediately down into the ground plane. Here, the student explored using the interstitial spaces between buildings to supplement the water that was going to the ground, so she could slow it in these walkways and green gardens that were suspended in alleyways. And as in this third example, the team explored using the plinths, the sort of new upper ground that includes the elevated set of walkways that Hong Kong is so famous for, and the natural organization that most dense cities have to have some lower levels of retail or commercial, then a plinth level where you change construction types, and then upper levels of residential and or commercial activities. In the following year, during the remote year of COVID-19, our students worked locally on sites in south of Market in San Francisco. Here's a plan of Soma, and on the right, the historically low-lying area of the city that illustrates why Soma is susceptible to flooding during San Francisco rainy seasons. In a somewhat parallel study, we looked at 4 districts in San Francisco, and we're trying to understand how you can map the amount of ground plane that is used by the car if we're going to value the ground plane. In white, in the plans above, are the spaces that are solely dedicated to the car. And you go left to right, you're going from the older San Francisco fabric to the newer fabric in Soma. Checkers is a suburban fabric. Okay, so when you look at these, which one values the ground the least? I will argue that valuable pedestrian and retail space given over to the car, you can see it immediately in Soma. So if we map then how much of that ground plane is available to absorb stormwater. So now we're going to say, I want to know where is it that water can seep into the ground. And I'm going to show that in black. Look at what you get. There's hardly any pervious surface left in Soma when you take away car spaces and building spaces. And if you look at any aerial, it's no surprise that Soma will flood in the winter. So we really have to keep our fingers crossed when we have a season of drought and the Sierra snowpack is low. So learning from the Hong Kong studio, we wanted to explore the idea of a new ground, a new urban watershed in Soma. The idea was to relayer the section, to augment the existing stormwater system, to increase the value of the ground, to slow rainwater, and use the rainwater rather than lose it to the storm system. So rather than letting the car use this valuable space, we explored a connected, animated, and walkable ground plane, valuing the ground. Autonomous vehicles aren't here yet, and the cars still need to be parked somewhere. This illustration doesn't have the car there, but essentially the second level is where we decided to park the cars. It was somewhat intentional because the new ground, the urban watershed, is sitting on top of the cars. So in case there's any leakage, the water goes into the car space, which is sort of capturing water as well. And so now we're collecting rainwater for the urban farm that's on the plinth itself. And then above the new ground, housing, office, and other uses are sitting there. Housing in particular adds gray water that can help bring water to the urban farm during dry seasons. So students made proposals based on this new paradigm. This is a student. We were looking at the work of Louis Tsuramaki Lewis, who made this proposal for New York, a new urban watershed. And then a few other examples of student work showing, valuing this new ground. So almost at the end. Going forward, the Hong Kong CED students are our future leaders of new urban water paradigms. We are at a time of needed disruption with innovators that will explore how all our urban systems will be disrupted toward a more sustainable future. I'd like to acknowledge the recent loss of Kongchen Yu, the Beijing-based educator and landscape architect who has pioneered landscapes as sponges. Our work really was to think about buildings as adding to the sponge network that Kongchen championed. Thank you very much for joining this evening. I can see some nice comments already going on.
Very good. Yeah, thank you so much, Dean Chow. And let's open this up for more Q&A as well. I see that some of the comments have already come in from our Q&A button. And also, Avi has also commented and suggested that we take a walk here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And in case you want to ask a question or give more comments, please use the Q&A button or use the chat function.
Chris, should I stop sharing? Is there a way that we can bring
Yes,
everybody
please.
into
Yeah,
the room?
I think yeah, Avi has also come online. Would you like to make a comment on this, Avi, or ask Dean Chow a question?
I know this was a great talk and really fascinating. I'm more interested in the civil engineering sort of transport car culture aspects of this, but this really went tied in well with that interest. I just pasted into the Q&A the description from San Francisco City Guides of their walk in the Mission Bay area, which is fascinating. I mean, even if you've lived in San Francisco for a long time, people don't realize just how much was involved in the Mission Bay construction around issues of handling runoff water.
Thank you for sharing that, Avi. Yeah, you have typed in quite a few things here. So I don't know if all the participants can see it, but it's very good information.
You know, Avi, I was going to add that I didn't show it here. As I step into retirement, I'm hoping to do a book on this. I really do want to talk about how you combine transport systems, water systems, energy systems, as we move into adapting our cities. Because the degree to which we've given everything over to the car is somewhat crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we recapture these interstitial spaces and make more out of them?
Yeah, while you were talking, I was thinking of the sort of the story that the general public hears about Chicago and the raising of downtown Chicago to allow for the development of the sewage system and to prevent flooding. And I realized that in telling that story, people almost never talk about the transit aspects of it. And that those issues go hand in hand. So yeah, well worth pointing that out and covering them together.
If you go back to the history of Paris, when it's the end of the day, I'm going to forget the well-known planner who essentially everyone's talking about how he carved all the radial streets into the Paris plan.
Yeah, Houseman.
Yes, Houseman, thank you. That's the same thing. That was also because they were building sewer lines into the city, and that was the excuse to essentially raise much of the city into this new configuration.
Mhm. Yeah, very interesting.
Very good. And there was also a question coming in from one of our attendees asking whether Hong Kong is able to better capture the rainwater during typhoons and also massive rain events. So I have some idea, but is there anything from an academic point of view, Renee, you can add?
I have not been following it as carefully as I should.
I think the short answer is yes. There are many reservoirs in Hong Kong who are there to provide drinking water and also daily usage to the citizens. But the typhoon season is only a few weeks in a year during the summertime usually. So majority of the water, probably 75% and more, still come from the mainland. And let me check if there's any more question from the participants.
The webinars are strange beasts. It's very quiet.
Yes, so we have no question at this point, but I just wanted to say again that today's session, Dean Chow, is both intellectually and environmentally beneficial to all peoples in the US, Hong Kong, and China. So once again, we want to thank you for sharing with us the similarities and also the differences for the Pearl River Delta in Hong Kong, China, and also in the Bay Area. So this has been a very constructive collaboration. And I think there is one question coming in from Annette about hearing about your book. So maybe you can speak a little bit more about your book before I conclude.
Annette, thank you for asking. It's a long ways away right now. The baby is in my head. I have to finish my year as dean before I have enough time to sit down to write it. I would say keep looking at the CED website if you can. When it finally comes out, I'm sure they'll announce it.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I will definitely be on the lookout for your book. And then just before I let everyone go, I would just like to say thank you to all the Cal alumni again who sponsor the urban studies, research projects, and collaboration between Berkeley and Hong Kong U. And once again, alumni from LHT Group, Lo Kwok Hotels, and also Nanfeng Group, Wuhan Fight Group, Chunwo, and FAA. So thank you very much. And the last thing I will say is go Bears,
Thank you all
Bears.
so much for joining. Go Bears.
go Bears. And you may log off now, and we will end the recording and also save it in case people want to watch it again. Thank you.